Where are we with Android? I think the hands up totally proved that, to me, Android is totally taking over. It's my almost first-hand set of choice. I'm right now rocking a Windows phone, but Android is...
That's quite interesting. You're talking about Android, you're pulling out a Windows phone out of your pocket.
This is how dedicated I am to Android. No. But the thing is that it's one of the most compelling operating systems because it's open source, right? And it allows developers to have a greater freedom than any other operating system out there. I mean, you try to develop an app for Apple, and they're like, this is how you have to do it, and they're extremely specific, right? And there's like no freedom to play in the way that you think people should interact with the world. You have to do it with the way that they think people should interact with the world, and that's not fun, right? And that's why Android's really interesting, right? So if we look at the hardware, right, this is Google's lineup, right? So this is the Nexus line. So this is hardware made by Google with different manufacturers to have like the optimal hardware moment, right? So like this is the way that Google envisions Android being used, and this is the best hardware that they can come up with that works with the operating system, right? And the Nexus lineup is affordable, it's high specification, and it's great, right? Like when we make recommendations, it's kind of just like, well, if you don't have any money, you should totally go for this because it's the best value for the dollar.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what makes me excited about Android, is that it's good value, right? It's really good value for the money, and you can't say that about Apple. You can't.
Well, you can somehow. I love the iPad,
yeah.
and it's good value.
It is good value, but it's a high-end value, right? It's not a mid-range product. It's a high-end.
That's
product,
true,
right? And even like the iPhone 5C, that's the best plastic phone that's ever been made, in my opinion.
I agree.
When you hold it, you're like, oh my God, this is plastic. Right, but it's amazing, and I'm not saying that Apple doesn't do a good job.
I think it's highly overpriced, though. I give you that. I give you that.
It's really expensive for their mid-range phone. It's crazy expensive. Where does Intel fit in? x86 is what your desktop PCs are based on. It's what your laptops are based on, and it's incredibly powerful and it's incredibly stable. Right? Not to say that ARM's not stable, but it's really powerful because it's what powers our computers. It's what powers the servers in our lives. It's kind of what powers the world, actually. Right? Like when Intel says that they want to see the future unfold this way, they're the one company that means it, right? Like when they look at ubiquitous computing and the cloud and wearable technology, them and Qualcomm are probably the two companies that actually have the know-how and the money and the infrastructure to take it forward and for it to be real. I mean, like we can stand up here and talk about how we want to see the world, but who are we? We don't have the bankroll and like the hardware to pull it off. So Intel has been cut out of this because Android has been primarily on ARM, right? So they haven't had access to this market. And Intel has finally made their architecture so that it runs on Android, right? So if you guys know anything about programming, programmers code, and they have to keep their hardware in mind, right?
And it's quite interesting. It also took them a while. The first Intel smartphone that we saw was like 4 years ago. And it was heavy and bulky, and they could only show it behind closed doors, which was quite interesting, right? And where they were coming from, because at that time you could already get like amazing ARM platforms, very super thin and light smartphones and tablets, and Intel kind of missed out this market. It is still an ARM market completely.
It is. It is. So Intel's trying to get the message out that developers can, port that their applications will work on x86 or like Intel-based platforms. But the thing is that I'm pretty sure like 99% of the people in this room don't really care what processor's in their smartphone. Right? No, like all of you are just like, Nicole, this is super boring. Why are you explaining the history?
It just needs to work.
Except for you, you're totally into it. Right? So this kind of like brings me to Android and what's going on in China, right? So when we look at Intel and their struggle, they're not really impacting in China right now, right? Because it's primarily like all of these Shenzhen guys and all of these manufacturers who make really, really cheap processors. Right, they're super cheap. They're not very powerful, right? And so, like when you buy tablets and stuff out of Asia, a lot of the time, like, they don't run as well as what usually happens in like the Samsung, well, not, yeah, the Samsung Galaxy Tab 3 or like the Nexus 7 or any of these other ones. We're starting to see some compelling China-specific chips come out that are really powerful, but not in the same way. So
well, that's why they only cost $40 or $50.
And that's why they only cost $40 or $50. So when you're kind of looking at all of these companies that are coming out of China, nobody ever here thought, God, I'm going to go buy a really high-quality tablet from China. Like, has anyone here ever bought a Shenzhen tablet? Or like something out of like a computer market in China and thought, God, this is a really good deal? Or like a knockoff phone? Anybody? There you go.
There you go.
A couple,
there
yeah.
you go.
Yeah, a couple of cheap knockoffs, right?
You just wanted to have the experience.
You're using one right now. So what's really interesting is that big companies, Qualcomm, Intel, are looking at the Chinese market and they're going, how do we get in here, right? Because China doesn't need to care about anybody else. They're big enough that they don't need to care about any other market. So they're building just for this market specifically. And what's really interesting is, if you look at Android in China, the #1 company that everyone should be paying attention to is Xiaomi.
They just had a launch event last weekend over here.
And Xiaomi's making amazing hardware. And it's stunning, right? The high specification, really gorgeous. And the thing that's different about Xiaomi and pretty much every other Chinese company, or actually globally any other company in the world, is that Xiaomi really bases their smartphone evolution on what's coming next, on what happens in their forums, right? So to work in a Xiaomi store, you have to have an X activity rating in the store, in the forums, in order to get a job in the store, right? And Xiaomi's being called the Apple of China. And the CEO of Xiaomi was just like, oh no, I don't want to be the Apple of China. And they're actually the opposite, right?
Well, exactly, because Apple only has like 5% of market share, and they have 10.
Yeah.
But they don't want to be Apple, trust me.
They don't want to be Apple, and Xiaomi launched in 2010.
Yeah.
Right, Xiaomi's been around for 3 years.
And they grabbed 10% of market share on the biggest smartphone market in the world.
And what's super interesting is that one of the original backers of Xiaomi was Qualcomm.
Yeah.
Did you know that?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting because, I mean, there's a reason why a guy like Hugo Barras is leaving Google and the Android team to become their new spokesperson and global business developer for Xiaomi, right? He was the face of Android at Google next to Andy Rubin. And now he's working at a Chinese manufacturer that is going to also invade the Western markets very, very soon. They're going to start in next year with this, with very, very affordable phones. They just released, I think it's called Red Rice.
Red Rice, yeah.
It's 3,900 NTs. It's a phone that's going to be available here in Taiwan. And they sold like 10,000 of them in 6 minutes or so. And I mean, it's Taiwan. It's not that of a big market, but there's a huge buzz around this. We've had this Xiaomi Mi 3, which is more of a high-end phone. This would be still below 10,000 NTs. It's beautifully built. It's aluminum case. Has a quad-core, whether it's going to be a Qualcomm Snapdragon 800 or a Tegra 4 processor. There's the latest technology in there. And they're selling it for below 10,000. And I mean, like 2 years ago, when you were thinking about a phone that costs below 10,000 NTs, right, it was basically crap. Yeah. But now you're not only getting a very well-built phone, but also the design is absolutely stunning, which is interesting.
No slight to Intel at all. Is this because Android has completely leveled the playing field?
It has.
Companies like Xiaomi can...
Oh, no, absolutely. Absolutely. I think Android in general democratized a whole new world and a whole new industry for OEMs. And you can see what kind of impact Android is having on this mobile phone market. That just yesterday, the rumor came up that Microsoft wants to make Windows RT and Windows Phone freely available for OEMs. Right now, I would guess that the license for Windows Phone would be roughly about $25 to $30. And when we're thinking about a phone that only costs $100 US, right? And when you have to pay for the operating system already a third of it, the margin is already just so teeny tiny with these devices. That's not going to happen. And therefore, you need to have a freely available operating system, which is also kind of interesting to see what these manufacturers are making out of it, because you can tell that Google is losing more and more of the grip of Android on Android, because you have these guys that are getting the source code of Android down there, and they have a heavily customized version. The most successful customized ROM for Android is CyanogenMod, and the CyanogenMod guys, they're building phones now with Oppo. And Oppo is another interesting Chinese company that is focusing on high quality hardware, great good looking products with new features in there that no one else has. And they're using their very, very own and customized Android version, which is going to be a problem in the future. You will see ecosystems popping up in China where you don't have Google Play Store anymore on your smartphone or Maps or whatnot.
The really interesting thing about China is you're not allowed to have pure Android in China, right? Like the Chinese government actually put down a rule that said that it has to be forked.
The Chinese NSA.
The Chinese NSA put down a rule that says it has to be forked. So Google actually isn't allowed to go into China pure right now anyways, right? So the thing is that, like this to me is a really interesting point, is in 2010, the Chinese government actually made a law that every company has to invest, I think it's 1%, they have to invest 1% of their profits back into R&D. And this was like a moment where I think everyone in China kind of went, oh, we can't just copy shit and it's not okay. Making Apple phones isn't fine. Making Nokia phones isn't a good business model. The government actually said, you guys need to figure out how to be innovative.
Absolutely.
We're going to force you to be innovative. Xiaomi launched in 2010, shortly after this rule came in, right? And so like this is now the new China, right? Oppo, Xiaomi, like this is where it's really coming.
Huawei, ZTE, right?
ZTE.
And especially, watch out what's going to happen in next year. Lenovo will be so aggressive on the Western markets. They will be in Central Europe. They will be in North. What's that?
They have Ashton Kutcher.
Okay, they do. Isn't he the new design?
He's the new head of design for.
Let's see.
Do you have a question?
Do you expect Xiaomi to cross out of China into the rest of the world markets? And if so, will they be competing on price or on design quality as well?
Both. It's going to happen next year already. They will launch in Western markets.
Do you think it's a serious threat to iPhone or other?
Absolutely. On each and every level. Because you know what the cool thing is about a company like Xiaomi is, why are people actually buying an Apple product?
Status.
So Apple had
this status anymore though?
Somehow it still is. I think Apple is, well, I don't
ridiculed heavily.
I don't really mean it in a negative way, because I think it's amazing to see this success story, and you always have to give them credit that they were capable of building this up, but it's almost like a religious cult, right? The Apple Store is their church, and that's why they're lining up. When they have, the next service going on over there, they're going to line up for like some 2 or 3 days. Just to get to this point, right, it really, really takes a lot of very smart marketing. It also takes a lot of smart people and also a lot of smart designing. And I think these Xiaomi guys, what they're doing right now, what you can see what's happening in China, and that's why it's also so hard for a company like Apple to be successful in China. Chinese people are turning into local patriots when it comes to devices and brands. This guy is a complete rock star in China. When he's having a speech, right, there will be like hundreds of people waiting for him to get signatures from him. Right? They just love this guy. It even happened over here in Taiwan during their press conference last weekend. It's just insane. So they're creating an idea. They're not creating only a brand, they're creating an idea, and they're also creating a little bit of confidence and self-esteem for Chinese customers, which were basically, when we're looking at the history of Chinese mobile brands in the last 3 or 4 years, the whole Western world were constantly complaining that Chinese are only copycats. And what they're doing right now with companies like Xiaomi and Oppo, these guys are setting new benchmarks. And I'm 100% sure that this is going to happen already next year, that more and more Western brands are going to copy Chinese brands.
Yeah, so I mean, like when you look at Android and the way that it's going to impact globally, when Chinese companies decide to move out of China, like watch out pretty much everyone, right? So to come back to our sponsor, this is kind of why Intel getting in the game is a compelling moment, because they have a bigger infrastructure than, well, they're on par with Qualcomm, right? So there's like two guys who could really impact things globally. And if Intel's finally got it together to kind of make that happen, their chipset status will, it'll be competitive, because if Intel doesn't grab the mobile phone market, then they're going to be in trouble, right? And they could actually lose everything.
And it's happening. I mean, you can see at the end of the day, it's all about design wins. On which platform can I just get my SoC? So they're cooperating with Samsung, cooperating. ASUS has a bunch of mobile devices with an Intel processor, and Lenovo does the same. And once again, Lenovo is the #1 PC manufacturer right now. And this happened like when Lenovo bought the PC division of IBM like 8 years ago. I remember the news at that time and the article, because everybody was saying, "Oh my God, that's it, it's over. ThinkPad is gone. This amazing notebook is gone." So what did they do? They created even better machines. So they have really fantastic device and fantastic platforms, and Lenovo will be one of the carriers for Intel in the future.
Yeah, I'm a total Lenovo fangirl, actually. Sorry, you have a question back there?
Isn't one of the biggest problems for Intel their pricing? Traditionally, they price their silicon like 10 times more than the ARM variants, because it's Intel, right?
No, it's not.
Yeah, but if you look at it traditionally, the core Intel business, it's at least 10 times the price.
No, it's never been.
Maybe not for the mobile division, right? But that has been a big roadblock for Intel.
I don't think so. When you're looking at an average ARM SoC that you want to buy, whether it's coming from NVIDIA, whether it's coming from Qualcomm, we're talking roughly about a price range in between $15 and $30 per 1,000 units. Of course, everything above this is negotiable, and at the end of the day, we're talking about millions and millions of platforms. Is Intel going to subsidize that platform to squeeze into the market? Hell yeah, I'm pretty sure about that, right? But once again, these SoCs are not inexpensive. It doesn't mean that this is saying, but this is an inexpensive device. Like a Qualcomm Snapdragon 800 is one of the most highly integrated SoCs that we've ever seen in mankind, right? This is just a very, very advanced device, and they're expensive, right? And therefore,
this has been their problem, right? Because they charge immensely for their silicon. Maybe on the mobile, on the H-Rail or whatever, right? That they are having a different strategy to try to compete with ARM, but that has been their main problem.
But this is over now, actually. This argument that x86 on mobile is more expensive than ARM. ASUS launched the PhonePad.
Right.
Yeah, the PhonePad.
How much is it here in Taiwan? 6,000?
6,000, right? Yeah, so like this is actually the first tablet that is price point to price point, spec to spec, everything. It's one-to-one with what ARM's doing. So actually, this moment of that argument, it ended with that device.
And you know what?
Everything moving forward now is actually kind of really competitive.
And actually, even for the desktop market, they don't care, because I think they have like 90% of the desktop market, no matter what kind of pricing situation they have over there.
It's 90% was a big percentage. The issue really is that which 86 chip? I mean, if you're looking at like the i7, you've got all kinds of support hardware. There's no way you're going to put it in a cell phone.
No, it's not going to happen. I mean,
chips which I haven't seen. I mean, I've been messing with all winter.
Yeah. Yeah.
which are
Well, they're parts of the Core I development that is going into their SoCs. For example, when you're looking at Bay Trail, they're basically using a GPU that was used on a Core I platform roughly about 2 generations ago. And now you're getting it on a mobile platform. So what you always have to keep in mind when you're comparing Intel and ARM, with ARM we have this kind of bottom to the top race, right? They started over here, low power consumption, low performance, and they wanted to get there. And Intel started over there, and they had this amazing power, but they also had this huge there was huge battery hogs, right? They need a lot of power consumption, and they wanted to get there. Right now, especially what we see with this generation that is available right now, when you're looking at the latest Qualcomm Snapdragons, and when you're looking at the latest Bay Trail processors, we are on this crossroad, right? Where they're meeting in between, and where it's getting very, very interesting to see, you know, how developers adopting this. If they are going to use x86 in the future, and having the chance to also use a lot of their desktop experience, their server experience to bring to the mobile market, or if this is going to be something where developers are thinking, oh, you know what, maybe ARM is finally also making this kind of great leap forward onto the desktop, which they try to do, especially with Microsoft with Windows RT.
Well, the thing about Android is that it's been ported to multiple platforms. So you may be talking about, as far as you guys are concerned, it doesn't matter what the hardware underlying it is. For my world, it is. But you know, be it an all-winner chip or one of the ARMs, as long as I can put a layer over it and then run regular Android on it, I'm happy.
No, that's what Nicole basically said, right? No one really cares about what kind of processor you are using. You have maybe like 2% of the users actually caring about what kind of SSC they have in their phone. At the end of the day, and you're so right with this, it needs to work. Right? And then I don't need to care about this. If it works fine, if it fits into my life, right, you won.
Can I ask you a generic question? It's kind of related. If Intel coming into this market at the point where you're saying, okay, smartphone growth is slowing down, we're not seeing where the new applications are, do they come in really just as an increasing level of competition that's going to bring one of the primary building material costs down to allow smartphones to become more ubiquitous? So are they going to bring something really new to the game in terms of technology or multi-cores? I don't know.
It's very important to keep in mind that the high-end smartphone growth rates is flattening out. Right? Each and every manufacturer is kind of focusing on this. Anything that is below $200 right now, this is going to be the new battlefield. You saw this with the announcement of the Motorola Moto G, $169, $199, right? Amazing device. Guess how Nokia took over Latin America or took over Russia, right? Because of their Nokia Lumia 5020 or 5025, which is a $120 device. So Nokia in Latin America, or Windows Phone Latin America, is a #2 right now in terms of market share. They have like, in countries like Colombia, they have a market share of 25 to 30%, which is absolutely amazing, right? And this is definitely the new battleground. We're gonna see next year, I'm pretty sure, a $100 smartphone from Samsung. And also a tablet in this price region.
The next billion handsets aren't going to be super phones, they're going to be mid-range platforms. It's like, this is the big number, but it really is. Like, there's enough chipset manufacturers now, especially from China right up to Intel and Qualcomm, that are focusing in on this low power, like not high graphics, just really solid long battery life phones, and that's where we're going to be seeing the race.
And what you always have to keep in mind, when we're looking at this battle, of this competition that goes on in between x86 and RISC architecture, right? First of all, it's good for us as users. Second, it's great for the OEMs, right? Because they can kind of play the good cop, bad cop game in between the two manufacturers, right? Plus, it also is pushing innovation into this market, and it's bringing the prices down, right? And this is going to happen. We would see very, very inexpensive phones, whether they're on ARM, whether they're going to be on an x86 platform. But what's interesting about this now, what we saw in the last let's say 4 or 5 months especially, is that we see more and more design wins with x86. And I'm a true believer in the x86 platform because I know what ARM has to do. Not that I don't like ARM. I have fantastic friends over there, and they're building amazing products, and they kind of changed the way we're using mobile devices. Without ARM, this mobile revolution would have never happened. But you also have to keep in mind that in terms of the performance per watt, x86 is on a completely different level. And I'm not only talking about what we're seeing with Apple right now, coming up with an A7 and with the first 64-bit SoC. And I remember times that people are saying, you know what, 64-bit doesn't make any sense until you have 4 gigabytes of RAM, and Apple is running this device with 1 gigabyte of RAM, right? And this is already the fastest SoC on the market right now, right? And they haven't even started to recompile their software onto a 64-bit architecture. This is going to happen, and it's going to be so disruptive. And therefore, Intel is going to also bring their, well, they have their 64-bit ready. It will come very, very soon. And you will also see in terms of they have quite some experience with this when it comes to add additional performance to it, having bigger L2 caches, right? This is something that ARM still needs to get. They started to run their first 64-bit generation right now. Intel is building 64-bit like for 5, 6, 7 years, right? Well, what's going to happen when we see the next generation of ARM processors, how they want to even be more competitive. I mean, what's going to be the next big thing? And that's why I think this is also very important to see why the high-end smartphone market is flattening out. The phones are fast enough. What do you want to do with it? Do you want to run Skyrim on it, on a 5-inch display? It doesn't make sense anymore. We are turning, the mobile world is turning into a world, and then consumers will be very, very aware of this, that they're buying good enough devices. This device fits my need. I don't need this 8-core, 3 gigabytes of RAM. I'm not using this performance. I'm not a gamer on my mobile device.
Are you saying that high performance doesn't matter anymore? You were talking before about
it always matters.
Cloud computing.
Yeah.
The hardware doesn't matter anymore because all of your data is in the cloud.
Yeah.
But what about when you have to produce something?
Yeah.
When you have to make new data to put into the cloud.
Yeah. If you have,
then you need the hardware, right?
What do you want to produce?
Something as simple as just a family video.
Okay. So which device that you can buy for $100 right now can't produce a family video?
Do it properly. You can be productive on your smartphone. For sure.
Do you want to do video editing on your smartphone?
No.
That's why you have a desktop PC, right?
iMovie is incredibly competitive right now. CyberLink on tablets is really good enough. I mean, like the thing is that even YouTube editor is getting pretty good.
Didn't you just buy a graphics card to put in your desktop?
That's exactly what you want to do. If you really want to, okay, here's the thing. If no one who's really an ambitious video editor is going to upload his next 10 family videos over his smartphone, if he really wants to do some nice video editing on it, he's going to take this data, go to his desktop or his notebook, and he's going to use this computing power. I don't want to do video editing on a 5-inch device. I just don't want to do this.
There is a concept that's coming out that this is going to be everything. That all you have at the house is a little cradle you drop this into.
That happened already with the Motorola Atrix 3 years ago.
It's nothing new, but this is where it would probably end up because the tablets are burned out, watches are burned out. You've run out of anything that people are going to buy. You've got to go over here someplace with something new.
No, I mean, like, I think the devices are going to stay very similar to what we have right now, but what we're going to see is the home cloud emerge, right? So like there's the cloud that we're talking about, the data everywhere, but I think the very first step to what you're talking about is the home cloud, right? So like have all of your data, at least like that you're comfortable with moving around, and that you are dropping your tablet, that you have NFC tags all over your house to do simple actions and like these types of things. Like once you have it at home, then we can start to talk about all the other things that we're talking about in this room. And I think, like, honestly, the biggest impediment to what Peter's talking about is, yeah, you can send it all up there, but I mean, there's like, what, 3 countries? Like, Taiwan's one of them, one of the countries where do we have enough bandwidth that we can do, right? Because it's really a bandwidth issue that is kind of stopping the cloud, right? Like in the US, I'm always shocked about how slow things are, right? But actually, we should probably wrap things up so everyone can drink. And we have a fire spinner.
There we go.
We've got a fire spinner, but we're here if you want to talk more about tech.